A warm welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week on the program, we take a deeper look at the case between Zhongshan Fusheng Industrial Investment Company and the Nigerian government and developments since the company was awarded over $70 million by the courts. My guest this week, UK commercial lawyer Anthony Ogunfable, dissects the roles of the Nigerian government in the case and what can be done now to remedy the situation. Later on, Israel and Hezbollah are at it again, the Israeli military conducting preemptive airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, and Lebanon concluding phase 1 of its attacks on Israel. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. A quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles. We'll be right back.
China says it is closely monitoring the growing mpox threat if restrictions or safety measures will be applied to the upcoming forum on China-Africa cooperation. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning confirmed this to reporters on Saturday. Speaking on the forum itself, China intends to invite Eswatini, which had been excluded from previous editions of the summit over its diplomatic ties with Taiwan. Mao said the One China principle is a prevailing consensus in the international community and that 183 countries have established diplomatic relations with China on the basis of One China principle. India's Foreign Minister Subramanian Jaishankar has reiterated that dialogue and diplomacy are key in ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He was making the remark at a press conference in Kiev over the weekend. It comes after Prime Minister Modi met with the Ukrainian president in Kiev on Friday for talks on economic ties and defense cooperation.
A little more than 2 years ago, he had actually publicly said that this is not an era of war. He had also underlined that dialogue and diplomacy are the key. Most recently, he emphasized that the solution will not come out of the battlefield. And obviously, we find the civilian and humanitarian toll of this conflict particularly distressing. It's also India's view that the two sides need to engage each other to find a solution. The Prime Minister reiterated the need for sincere and practical engagement between all stakeholders to develop innovative solutions that will have broad acceptability and contribute towards early restoration of peace. He reiterated India's willingness to contribute in all possible ways to facilitate an early return of peace.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced the country's first use of the Panista drone missile system. The announcement came during an event marking Ukraine's 33rd independence at St. Sophia Square in Kiev. He said this is the new method of retaliation against the aggressor Russia, and he thanked all developers, manufacturing and warriors.
Абсолютно нового класу зброї української ракети дрона Паляниці.
The president was joined by Lithuanian's Prime Minister Ingrida Simonite and Polish President Andrzej Duda.
Розробникам, виробникам і нашим воїнам.
Russia and Ukraine have exchanged 115 prisoners of war as part of a deal mediated by the United Arab Emirates. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the news on X on Saturday. Russia's defense ministry reported that its servicemen released by Ukraine were captured by AFU troops amid fighting in the Kursk border region. In turn, the UAE's foreign ministry announced that 1,788 captives were exchanged through the intermediary activities. The release marks the seventh prisoner swap facilitated by Abu Dhabi.
We go deeper now into our exploration of the deal that went awry between Zhongshan Fusheng Industrial Investment Company and the Nigerian government. The deal was actually between the company and Ogun State in Nigeria. But the court verdicts and confirmation by international courts and recent activity by the company have shown that this is between a foreign company and the Nigerian government. Last week, we left things off with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, saying the matter was going to be dealt with diplomatically and legally, as he would be working with the Attorney General to achieve an agreeable conclusion. Apart from its attempts to seize a presidential jet last week, which was eventually released for the Nigerian president to embark on a visit to France as a gesture of goodwill to allow for talks to show it has consistently sought to act reasonably and fairly in the course of a legal dispute, Zhongshan went ahead to seize two guest houses linked to the Nigerian government in Liverpool, the United Kingdom. The properties identified as 15 Aigburth Hall Road, Liverpool, and Beach Lodge at 49 Calderstones Road in Liverpool were reportedly worth between 1.3 and 1.7 million pounds in June. The seizure is part of Zhongshan's attempt to retrieve its $70 million in arbitration award against Nigeria, which remained outstanding as of August 20, 2024, with 2% monthly interest accruals. The Chinese firm has also seized a Bombardier 600 jet in Canada as part of a global hunt for Nigeria's assets. A French court still has two jets owned by the Nigerian government amid the long-standing dispute between the Nigerian government and the Chinese company. While many have decried the embarrassment that this is to the country, others say it reeks of a deeper problem. One of those is my guest today, Mr. Anthony Ogunfebo, a commercial lawyer based in London, from where he joins me. Anthony, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, this issue between Nigeria and Zhongshan, which we'll explore much deeper, you said it reeks of a deeper problem. Could you explain further what you mean by that?
Yes, I mean, to start with, there's obviously an issue here which actually goes beyond the mere fact of a commercial dispute between the Ogun State government and Zhongshan, which is the name of the Chinese company. I think it also goes to the bilateral diplomatic level, or should I say the diplomatic relations between Nigeria and China, because I should make the point that this crisis actually has its genesis in a bilateral investment treaty signed between Nigeria and China in 2001. That was the framework within which the contract was then signed between Zhongshan and the Ogun State government. I believe that was in 2013. So there is that issue. And I have to say, I'm actually surprised that the Chinese government throughout this period hasn't stepped in to try to resolve this commercial dispute, if I can put it that way, between a subnational organ in Nigeria, namely the Ogun State government, and by turn the Nigerian government, which of course is ultimately responsible or has ultimate liability for any judgment award made against the Ogun State government, which is basically what's happened in this case. The judgment was awarded, an arbitration judgment was awarded against the Ogun State government, but within the framework of that treaty, of that bilateral investment treaty between Nigeria and China, the federal government of Nigeria is ultimately responsible for satisfying that judgment.
Yes, and I'm not sure we're going to get any response from the Chinese government. Usually they do not respond to things like this. I mean, they have a company that's already won this judgment. But what were your thoughts on the ruling by the courts on this deal? Thank you for laying the background for us. You know, I think that, this issue would be a reference point for lawyers in the near future and even now.
Yes. Thank you very much. In fact, I've got to say that that is one of the most interesting features about this case, And it's one in respect of which many lawyers and even laymen alike have commented on why the federal government of Nigeria should be responsible for the acts of the Ogun State government, because as far as they're concerned, the agreement was signed between Zongshen and the Ogun State government, and not Zongshen and the federal government. But I have to say that this argument or this issue was in fact fully considered by the arbitration tribunal in London, which unfortunately rejected this argument because the tribunal relied on some leading arbitration cases in which I have to say it was held that a sovereign state is effectively responsible for the breaches of bilateral investment treaties by subnational organs and local governments, which are to be treated as part of that sovereign state. In fact, some of the, if I can just mention in passing, two of the leading cases in this area. The first case is the case of Nissan Motors and the Republic of India, in which this legal principle was established. And the second case, the second leading case in this area, surprise, surprise, in fact, involves Nigeria. It's the case of Interocean Oil Development and Exploration against the federal government of Nigeria.
Wow, but then once again, your thoughts on the verdict itself, the ruling
Yes.
from the courts. What did you make of
Yes.
it?
Well, as far as the ruling is concerned, I think the arbitration panel fully considered all the arguments raised by both parties. I should actually add that in terms of the tribunal itself, the arbitration tribunal itself, I should point out, it's interesting to note that the chairman of that tribunal, actually, his name is Lord Neuberger. He actually happens to be the former president of the Supreme Court in the UK. So basically, he is the equivalent of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He no longer occupies that position. But the fact that he headed that tribunal, he presided over that tribunal, would suggest to me that the judgment was fully considered before all the issues were fully considered before that judgment was passed. Now, as far as the ruling itself is concerned, like I said, the main argument raised by the Nigerian government has to do with the issue of sovereign immunity. But the problem the Nigerian government had there is that under a United Nations Convention, that's the United Nations Convention on jurisdictional immunities of foreign countries and their properties. An article in that convention states that once you submit to arbitration and you take part fully in arbitration proceedings, you have to abide by the judgment of that tribunal. You cannot then turn around and say and claim sovereign immunity, because the idea or the thinking is that by taking part in those proceedings, you've effectively waived your right to sovereign immunity. And I think that's basically what happened in this case. Nigeria fully took part in the proceedings, and as such, any appeal lodged by Nigeria against the judgment would meet with that obstacle that, look, you've submitted to the jurisdiction of the tribunal. A judgment has been made against you, so you cannot now turn around and claim sovereign immunity and say that that judgment should not apply to you, or that that judgment should not be enforced against you. And in all the applications against enforcement that the Nigerian government has lodged in different jurisdictions, in the UK, in France, in the United States, in Canada, the Nigerian government has always run up against this brick wall, against this obstacle of overcoming the sovereign immunity exception. And all the courts have refused or rejected Nigeria's argument of the defense of sovereign immunity.
Welcome back. I've been discussing the latest in the case between Zhongshan Fusheng Investment Company Limited and the Nigerian government with commercial lawyer Anthony Ogunfable. Let's get back to the concluding part. Going forward, since we're talking diplomatically now, will this hamper relations with China? It doesn't seem to have affected anything. I know there's a major meeting between the Chinese group and with the Nigerian government coming up in September. This was made known during my time in China just a few weeks ago. So I know that could possibly be discussed, hopefully, during the period of time that the official will be in the country. But going forward, do you think that this would affect Nigeria's relations with China? There's so much going on between the two countries and so many partnerships at stake here.
Absolutely. But you see, apart from the negative impact it could have on China-Nigeria relations, I think there's also an issue with regards to Nigeria's credibility as a foreign investment destination. And that worries me, because the fallout from this case is giving all sorts of negative optics to potential investors in Nigeria. And let's face it, the judgment amount, the judgment award is in the region of $77 million. Yes, in my view, already, yes, the cost to Nigeria as a result of this enforcement attempts by Zhongshan, the cost to Nigeria, in my view, in the loss of potential FDI, that's foreign direct investment, the loss to Nigeria, I believe, is already more than $77 million.
Already.
So it's also imperative for Nigeria to put a stop to all this, to resolve the crisis as soon as possible, because the longer this drags on, the more potential foreign investors are going to develop a cold feet as to the thought of investing in Nigeria. And that, for me, does not augur well for the future.
Well, there's also the loss in properties and assets, one of which is one of the Nigerian planes in Canada that has been seized by Zhongshan. There's also two properties in Liverpool. There are rumors that those have been put on eBay for sale. And just before the show, you did research on that and found out that hasn't been put on eBay already. And there is a process to this. So you could explain to us, how it is that Zhongshan could retrieve, the monies by when it seizes these properties, how easily can it discard them or dispose of them so that it retrieves its money?
Thank you very much, Margie. I think as far as disposing of the properties is concerned, it's basically got to be a case of finding a willing buyer who's interested in these properties, and then Zhongshan will name its price, the buyer will name their price, and if the two can agree a price, then you have a sale. But while saying that, I think even Zhongshan may well have some obstacles to overcome in terms of, in particular, the jets that were seized in France. Those are the three presidential jets. I understand that one of them has now been released to the federal government.
One of them was released to the federal government for the president to go to France
as a goodwill gesture.
As a goodwill gesture, right?
But as far as the other two are concerned, I actually believe that the French court, which gave which made that ruling, should not have given Zhongshan the right to seize the planes. And the reason why I say that is that, of course, the French were following a French legal doctrine, which is known as, in French, as la suppression de l'immunité souveraine, which in English basically means the removal of sovereign immunity. But under the New York Convention, the United Nations Convention, on jurisdictional immunities of states and their properties, you cannot seize an asset belonging to a government which is used for a government non-commercial purpose. You cannot also seize a warship. You cannot seize military aircraft belonging to the Air Force. Now, I had a look at the plane that was actually released, that was released by the Chinese firm, that's Zhongshan, to the Nigerian government as a goodwill gesture. And I noticed that the markings on that plane, on the fuselage of that plane, reads Nigeria Air Force. That suggests to me that that plane is, maybe it's not owned by the Nigerian government, but presumably it's probably operated by the Nigerian government, by the Nigerian Air Force. And for that reason alone, I believe that it's actually, it's not right, it's not lawful for the French court to have given Zhongshan the right to seize that plane, because that appears to me to be contrary to the provisions of the UN Convention on Jurisdictional Immunities. That plane, or those planes, were not being used for a commercial purpose. They either belong to the Nigerian Air Force, or they were being used wholly for government purposes. And that use constitutes an exception to seizure under the UN Convention of 2004.
Yes, and to understand that any agreement signed between subnational actors and international companies reflects on the federal government. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Because the boss talks to the federal government.
Exactly. Anthony Ogufebo, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Israel says it has conducted preemptive airstrikes against Lebanese militant group Hisbah's targets. This after Hisbah confirmed it has completed and accomplished the first phase of its operation in Israel. It's the continuation of major escalation between Israel and the militant group sponsored by Iran and supported by Hamas. The recent clashes between the Israeli military and Hezbollah began on Friday as Israeli artillery targeted the town of Al-Qiyam in the Majayun district, while Hezbollah launched a rocket attack on the Metula site in Israel. Israeli artillery was seen hitting a fuel tank in Al-Qiyam, causing a fire. There were no casualties reported. The IDF said 10 rockets were fired at Kiryat Shmona. Some of them were intercepted by the Iron Dome system, while others landed in the city but did not cause any injuries. Lebanese media confirmed the incident was caused by artillery fire, not an airstrike. The conflict escalated further when the Lebanese Ministry of Health reported that 10 people, including a child, were killed in Israeli airstrikes on various locations in southern Lebanon on Friday. On Sunday, the Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari claimed the Lebanese militant group was planning to launch an extensive attack on civilians.
We can see that Hezbollah is preparing to launch an extensive attack on Israel, while endangering the Lebanese civilians. We warn the civilians located in the areas where Hezbollah is operating to move out of harm's way immediately for their own safety.
Earlier on Sunday, Israeli military launched a barrage of missiles on several villages in the Nabatea district of southern Lebanon after the claims of a civilian attack by Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel had destroyed thousands of rockets launched over the Lebanese border by Hezbollah. He warned Hezbollah that the IDF's preemptive strikes on terror targets were not the end of the story, and that the IDF was striking Hezbollah with surprising, devastating blows. In the meantime, Large crowds of passengers were seen at Israel's Ben Gurion airport on Sunday as tensions escalating between Israel and Hisbah led to several airlines cancelling or rescheduling flights over safety fears.
Today I was hoping to see my daughter, who I haven't met for a year and a half, and I had to fly to Spain, but unfortunately Wizz Air cancelled all the flights.
Hamas, Israel's main focus in the Middle East, has commended the strikes against Israel. That'll be all on Diplomatic Channel this week. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I hope you'll join me again next time. Bye for now.